Internet baby. What's some popular self-care self-love advice that is actually really toxic? If you are, is only good advice if you're a good person. A lot of people take this to mean that literally anything and everything about yourself is above criticism, and yeah, it's super effing toxic. It's basically don't improve yourself. If people don't like you for you who are, that's their problem. No, sometimes you're the asshole. 9/10 the common denominator rule stands. If you run into an asshole every now and then, that's normal. If everyone you interact with is an asshole, you're the asshole. My dad's version of this was, if everywhere you go smells like dog shit, it's probably on your shoe. It's not really advice, but it's popular for people to label themselves as brutally honest. Honesty is good, but beware of people who are more interested in the brutality than the honesty. The difference between honesty and brutal honesty is something called tact. My stepfather delighted in upsetting family members by telling them stuff that was truthful, but in a very callous way. Then when called on it, would just say, "What, I'm just telling the truth." No, you just like to upset people by verbalizing their insecurities. Live your truth. There is a fine line between authenticity and being an asshole. I've yet to meet a person who uses "I'm speaking my truth" who didn't clearly mean "I don't care how incorrect or hurtful what I'm about to say is. If you don't accept it, you're disrespecting me. The how not to give a fuck nonsense. I agree, don't give a fuck what people think if you enjoy a certain type of music. But do give a fuck about how your actions affect other people. Unfortunately, it seems that many people just take it to mean don't care that you might hurt other people. In order to self-care and self-love, it is important to consider what consequences your actions have on the world around you. There is a whole industry built around what I call narcissism as self-help. It essentially boils down to everyone else is wrong, you're always right, the only problem you need to fix is that you care too much about what other people think. There is definitely something to be said for people who are far too self-conscious, but social interaction is a core concept for being a healthy, happy human. You aren't going to find happiness by turning into a sociopath. Stop texting people first to see who your friends are. What if they're doing the same thing and you just ended a friendship due to a misunderstanding? Yes, if you're the only one doing work in the friendship, then maybe you should reevaluate it, but it also could be someone is going through something that you don't know about and they really don't want to talk to anyone at that time. So what I was really trying to say is that this isn't a solution for everyone. It's really just a solution for some. Ignore the haters. Sometimes the haters are people who love you and want to warn you of potential pitfalls, such as MLMs, cults, abusive relationships, etc. Update: a few people are saying that the definition of haters is, essentially, only people who are hating for the wrong reasons. I agree, that's what this advice intends to communicate. Basically, don't pay any attention to people who project consistent irrational negativity your way. My concern is that this phrase is so easily misapplied as a self-love mantra, which ultimately serves to keep some vulnerable people from listening to the valid and well-intentioned concerns of loved ones. It can be used by a manipulative person to keep victims' vulnerable followers in line. I like haters gonna hate better because it implies there is a pattern. Like, oh, that person is always hating, so of course they're hating now. But if your sister is usually supportive and definitely not a hater by nature and is suddenly very concerned that your relationship is abusive, listen up. I think it comes down to the idea that you have, arguably, more to lose by disregarding a well-intentioned friend than by paying attention to an ill-intentioned one. Do whatever feels right. Sometimes what feels right is cutting your veins open, but that's not gonna heal you. Follow your heart. Honestly, this statement almost never works. Sometimes love can be toxic, and maybe the correct decision is painful. Maybe it pains you to leave someone. Your heart shouldn't rule you. Your heart is stupid. Listen to your heart, but follow your head. Guilt is a wasted emotion. Pretty sure it was Wayne Dyer who published this nonsense in the 80s. Having at least some guilt is a good sign that you're not a psychopath. The way my doc phrased it makes total sense to me. Is this emotion useful? In the case of guilt, ask yourself if it's useful to you. Does it help you learn something? Change a bad behavior? Prevent you from hurting someone in the future? Then it's useful. If you're feeling guilty over something and you analyze it and come to the realization that it's not useful, likely because you legitimately shouldn't feel guilty about it, then allow yourself to let go of the guilt. It works well with almost any negative emotion I may be struggling with. Show them what they're missing. No. Just do better for yourself. I feel like spite is a great motivator for starting an activity strong, but it's not reliable over time. Once you fall in love with someone, you cannot fall back in love with them. Worst advice I ever got. I am so glad I gave it a second try. True enough. People change and develop all the time. In 20 years' time you're two completely different people, with new experiences, wisdom, education, pressures, interests. The idea that you can't fall back in love with someone was probably made up by the most stubborn types of people who fail to see how anything can change and why they ever should try. Any kind of advice that tells you to test friendships by withholding contact to see if they'll notice, or straight up tells you to drop friends that don't reach out to you regularly. This is a very selfish and passive-aggressive thing to do. If you miss your friend, then call them up, don't play cat and mouse games. Maybe they have shit going on in their lives, the world does not revolve around you. The sort of positivity that relies on dragging other people down. I see it the most around body image issues in particular, but can apply to other things too, and I just think it's really sad. It doesn't solve any of the underlying issues, just makes more people feel rubbish about themselves. Find a job you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. First of all, even a job you love is going to suck, often. That's why they pay you to do it. This advice leaves you feeling like a failure whenever you have a bad day at work. Plus, there's a lot of value in working for a living and finding your satisfaction at a more personal level. I love what I do, and let me tell you something, I've worked some days. Brian David Gilbert. Cut off anyone that doesn't bring you peace. Obviously this applies to people who are constantly, deliberately making you miserable. But a stressful situation or argument with a friend that you care about doesn't count if you haven't attempted to work it out with them. That you should expect unconditional support, love and acceptance from friends or romantic partners. Popular idea, but if people really care they will tell you when you are harming yourself or others, rather than just keep the vibe chill. Unconditional support does not mean they go along with whatever you want. It means they care about you and support you, even when you make bad decisions. And sometimes, supporting you means telling you how it is. Why are you sad? You have everything to be happy. Even if there's few happy things in your life, you don't need to be ashamed to feel sad or depressed. Should parents tell you when you say you are depressed? Just be yourself. Myself is a guy who likes to work minimum wage, part-time jobs that require no mental input, and then spend the rest of his time playing video games and eating junk food. He's overweight, underpaid, and has no interaction with his friends or family. I don't want to be myself. I want to be a better version of myself. The whole blood is thicker than water advice, where you should feel obligated to be loyal to your family no matter what. If they are toxic or abusive, then there is no reason for you to keep that around in your life, especially if it is detrimental to your own well-being, mental health. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Basically just a green light to be a shitty human being. I've always considered this one to have been appropriated by shitty people. I think that the core of the saying is that everyone has shitty moments where they aren't a pleasure to be around. It was meant to address other people who only wanted to be with someone who was wonderful all of the time. Unfortunately, the shitty people have taken the phrase over. Much like most sayings. That oxes and cleanses. Happiness is a choice. Damn, I must be choosing depression then, I guess. Don't let yourself act like the victim. Had someone tell me not to let my wife feel like a victim after being sexually assaulted. I hear people say this a lot because they think it helps real victims feel less like one, but people need to process things. They can't just run through the healing process by pretending it didn't happen. Always trust your feelings. This advice is everywhere. No, oftentimes our feelings require introspection to work through them and make positive change. Positive vibes only. You just need to stay positive. People use it because they think it's uplifting, but it's actually quite dismissive. Often people say it when people voice sadness, frustration, emotional fatigue, anger, basically any other emotion but happiness. A positive attitude can get you a long way, but so can acknowledging and letting yourself others feel emotions. My husband said this to me at the height of the pandemic when I was coming home sobbing after 10-plus-hour shifts as a COVID nurse. He asked me to move out because it was too much for him. He learned it from his life coach. Moving out and going through trauma therapy made me realize not only is that really bad advice, it is detrimental to your mental health. Already knew most of it, but now my husband is begging me to come home for his mental health. Edit. Thanks everyone for putting time in to comment. Thanks for the awards. Wish I could respond to everyone. To clarify, the life coach is not a therapist, he is a friend of my husband's. I am encouraging him to see a therapist. I am guarding my mental health with my life. We will go to marriage counseling when I am ready. I will not move back in unless I feel loved and supported. I am not doing this for my daughter, it for myself first. Also, someone had commented why go back to somewhere that I cry every day. COVID was an unusual beast, especially at the peak. I had cried once in the 19 years prior to COVID. I saw and did things at the peak of COVID that I had never seen or done before. It was unprecedented, and we were all unprepared and grossly understaffed. I hate to compare it to actual combat, but it was vaguely like being in a war. COVID is not over, but with the vaccine and the education we have now, it is less terrifying, and the numbers are way down. I hope we don't ever have to go through anything like that again. But if I ever need anyone's ass kicked, I know who to go to. Reddit.